Hey guys, welcome to today's studio tour. We're going to talk about how to achieve the best pop punk tone without spending a ton of money. What really inspired me to make this video is Billy Joe Armstrong collaborated with Marshall, came out with that 1959 tube head, $4,000, very expensive, and I know some of you might think that you have to spend that kind of money to achieve that kind of a tone. Now, this is not a comparison between having a Marshall tube amp or any kind of tube amp with a solid state amp. We are going to be talking about solid state here also. You do not need to spend a crazy amount of money to achieve the tone that you're looking for. Believe it or not, a lot of your tone has to do with things that you might not even think about, like microphone placement is, in my opinion, one of the biggest contributing factors to what your overall tone is going to be in your recording. I know the title says best pop punk tone, but it really is subjective. Everybody has their own taste. Everybody has their own opinion of what the best pop punk tone is. But I want to show you my take on it, what I use, my entire setup. I know I've had videos about my pedal board setup, my amp setup, but now I want to put everything together so that way you have a good idea, and you could use some of these tips in this video for your own setups. I'm going to play a few snippets from some past music videos that I did. I feel like just playing the guitar is all well and good, but I feel like there's more context when you have a full performance going on, when you have the rhythm, the lead guitar, the bass, the drums, the vocals, everything together, so you can see what this guitar tone would sound like in a full production as opposed to just playing the guitar. All right, so let's roll the tape. First thing I'm going to talk about is your microphone placement, because this is something that you guys can use if you have any kind of amplifier. Doesn't matter, because your microphone placement is super important, and it's something that everybody, I feel like, could use. You don't need to have my setup for this tip. So when it comes to your microphone placement, I like it about 1 inch to 1.5 inches away from the amplifier. I use a Shure SM57, and I have it placed in between the dust cap and the outside edge of the speaker cone, so it's kind of in that middle. And I also have it angled to like a 45-degree angle, and again, 1 inch to 1.5 inches away is where I like it. You can play around with it, see what you like a little bit better. Now, as far as your amplifier settings, there's a few things that I do want to mention. Your gain. I know a lot of us, we like to rock, we like to turn the gain all the way to 10, but for recording purposes, you want to have a low gain and you want to push your pedals a lot more. I like to have my gain around 9 o'clock, and then I'll push the pedals. I use a Green Day MXR, I think it's the Green Day MXR V2 pedal that I have, and I have it hooked up with a TS9 tube screamer. I have the TS9 tube screamer placed in the front of the dirty pedal signal chain. As far as the EQ settings go for the amplifier, I'm going to have a screenshot of exactly how I have my amplifier set up in my recordings. I don't really touch it unless I'm trying to tweak something, but I have everything the way I want it. So what I do want to talk about is your volume and then your master. Most amplifiers have a separate volume and master. So what you want to do with your volume, you want to crank that all the way, so that way it's going to push your pedals a little bit harder, so you're going to hear the pedals a lot more. And you want to have your master volume kind of, you know, at a moderate level. The volume is going to be pushing the signal with your pedals, if that makes sense. Every distortion pedal is going to be a little bit different. I'm not saying you guys have to go out and get the Green Day MXR pedal that I like to use. If you already have a super high gain distortion pedal, like I have the Friedman BE overdrive pedal, I don't use the tube screamer anymore with that, because you're just pushing a little bit too much. But for example, the Green Day pedal that I have, if you're using a pedal that isn't super high gain, like the MXR Green Day pedal that I have is not super high gain. It has a lot of bottom end on it, so for something like that, you would want to use a TS9 tube screamer, so that way you get that nice mid-range boost and it cuts through the mix really nicely. So again, if you're using a super high gain distortion pedal, you don't really need to use the tube screamer. It's already doing its job. But for a distortion pedal that doesn't have that really high gain, if it's not pushing the mids too high, that's when you want to have the tube screamer. Now, I don't suggest using a TS9 tube screamer, any kind of tube screamer, as a distortion pedal. I don't think you're going to achieve the sound that you're looking for. That's just my own personal opinion. Everybody's got a different sound. Everybody has a different opinion for the sound that they're looking for. In my opinion, I think the Tube Screamer serves best as a complementary pedal, not a main distortion pedal. The one mistake I do see a lot of people doing with the Tube Screamer is they'll push their drive all the way. You don't need to push that all the way. Have the drive at like 9 o'clock, just like your amplifier, and boost up your tone knob. You don't want to focus much on drive, you want to focus on the tone. That's what's going to cut through the mix. That's going to be the Tube Screamer doing its job. As far as guitar pickups go, again, this is more of a preferential thing. I love the Seymour Duncan Invader pickups. If you guys are familiar with Tom DeLonge setup from Blink-182, Enema of the State, I think Take Off Your Pants and Jacket was recorded with Invader pickups. I believe Tom's even today still uses the Invader pickups, and I have it on my Stratocaster. Now, something that I want you to keep in mind is when you get your pickups, it's not always going to sound the same with every guitar. So I have Invader pickups on my Wolf custom guitar, which kind of has, if you've seen my music videos, it's a blue guitar that has, it's got that Gibson body style, not really the Stratocaster body style. But it does sound a little bit different coming from the Wolf guitar as opposed to my Stratocaster HSS guitar. The Stratocaster, it just sounds a little bit beefier as opposed to my Wolf guitar, where it's got a little bit more high end. It's got a little bit more treble action going on. So there's going to always be some different tweaks involved depending on your guitar setup, but I just wanted to show you guys and talk about what my setup is. And it's really important to understand all the elements involved. There's always going to be controversy about what is the biggest thing that's affecting your guitar tone. I've always thought that it's your mic placement and your amplifier. The pedals serve more complementary, but your amplifier and your microphone placement, I think, is going to serve, it's going to have the biggest impact on what your tone is going to be. Now, your pickups that you're using, the strings that you're using, all that adds up. It's all complementary to each other as far as your overall guitar tone. If you guys have any questions about getting a better guitar tone, or if you need help with something as far as maybe your signal chain goes, or amplifier settings, microphone placement settings, anything at all, be sure to drop it in the comment section below. I like for this to be a community discussion where we can all discuss what we like, what we don't like, how our setups are, our experiences, all that stuff. So I think that's super important for us to have a little bit of give and take, have ourselves a discussion, so that way we can all learn from each other and become better musicians and songwriters that way. I did forget to mention in the video that I am using the Boss Katana Artist Series amplifier. I know it's not a tube amplifier, it's a solid state amplifier, but I really like it. Now, if you combine the microphone placement that I talked about, the different pedals, now your signal chain is also super important, so if that's something you also have a question about, be sure, do not be afraid to drop it in the comment section. I do read all the comments. I respond to every comment that I possibly could. This isn't a tube amplifier versus a solid state amplifier discussion. Honestly, there's a lot more than just your amplifier when it comes to your tone anyway. So I just wanted to have a little discussion on what I think is the best pop punk sound. I like having a nice high mid-range in my tone. I don't like it to sound really bassy. I don't like it to sound too harsh and abrasive. Now, also your EQ plays a huge role in how your guitar tone is going to be as well. So there's so many different contributing factors. It's not just about one thing. It's not your guitar amp. It's not going to be about this one pedal. You need this. You absolutely have to have this pedal, because face it, have you ever watched a YouTube video and you listen to a pedal and then you buy the pedal and it's not exactly what you thought it was going to sound like? It's because whoever you watched on YouTube or any kind of video on social media, they are using a completely different setup. They're not just using the pedal, they're using maybe a different amplifier. They might be miking a little bit differently. Room acoustics also plays a role. Whether someone's using an amplifier or just using a preamp or plug-in. So it's not like, oh, Eric has the Boss Katana, I'm gonna go and get the Boss Katana and it's gonna sound exactly the way his did in his music videos. There's just so much stuff involved. So hopefully I gave you guys a little bit better insight on what you need to do to achieve a really good guitar tone, whether it's, you know, giving you a little bit better perspective, a different perspective on your microphone placement, the type of amplifier you're using. Listen, don't be afraid to use a solid state amplifier. I know a lot of the older guys, they pretty much scoff at anybody that's not using a tube amplifier, but you can still achieve a really good tone using a solid state amplifier. Not everybody has $2,000 or, you know, a lot of money for a tube amplifier. I mean, you know, Marshall tube amp, look it up. Very expensive. Even if you get a combo amplifier you know, you're still going to be spending like $1,000, you know. So hopefully I answered a lot of your questions that you might have had in the video. And be sure to drop a like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell. We are coming out with an original video I'm working on with Jack Trudeau, as a producer over in Nashville, Tennessee. So hopefully we'll have that done by next week. If not, we'll have another studio chat video, but we are in the works on something original. So if you haven't checked out the latest music video that I did, it was the Drop Dead cover by Olivia Rodrigo. So it's got like a really cool punk rock spin to it. So definitely check that out. So I hope you guys all have yourselves a really good day, and I will see you next Friday.